disable that. Advanced scene switcher, macro, disable all. There we go, and camera. Nice. Do, do, do. Nice. Okay, I will tweet it out. I fucked up and didn't take the screenshot. My hotkey doesn't work. Why does my hotkey work? SMH. That worked. Nice. Okay, okay, okay. Cool. Gonna let people trickle in for a little bit before I start. Let me see, am I live like I should be? I should have disabled chat as well. Let me test that. Good, chat is not on the screen. That is perfect. I have written way too much about this. I'll show a segment of it. Let me see. This shows studio mode. Here's what I've written so far. Quite a lot. It's a decent bit. But I thought that was necessary. Probably not gonna have this on screen during the actual thing, but probably gonna post it as a like paste bin afterwards. But nice, nice. I should add the clips as well that I was thinking of, like the like the Bobby clip. Should have that on the ready. Nice. Let me go studio mode, make sure this is smooth. This would take me to what would this look like? Not correct. Hey. Okay, hello? I broke OBS. Okay, my OBS is crashing. It's crazy. I don't even know how. Studio mode broke on me. Oh, it's back. Good. What? Encoding overloaded. Considering turning down your video settings. Okay, studio mode doesn't like me. I see. Good to know. Let me... As soon as I add it, it disappears. That's so weird. Whatever, it's fine. No need to debate. Time to close stream. True, true. I know, I'll just do it simply. I know what to do. There we go. Nice. We have got the Reddit tab up with the Hbox post. And we have the what's it called? We have the Bobby clip ready with the shader. Before you start, are you aware of anything behind the scenes of community leaders putting in any effort at all to figure out a fair rule set or nerf for boxes? Yes, I'm aware of a effort there, but I don't know how it's going, which is the issue, partly. The fact that no one knows how that effort is going and at what speed it's going and like what issues they've encountered and everything, you know? So the fact that there's no transparency there is a big issue. And something I will bring up. I mean, it's a start, but let me put it this way. It's been a start for a long time. And when it's been a start for a long time, that's a problem. I've been in contact with people discussing box nerfs for probably over a year now. So that's a problem when, you know, and sometimes, I mean, what really annoys me is the fact that I got approached by completely new people telling me they were gonna do what the first group was gonna do. And I was like, how do you not have contact with each other? What's going on here? So there's some issues there, so to speak. And yeah, I've been asked for my takes and like if I want to trial nerfs and stuff. And I've always been like, yeah, I will, sure. But then nothing has come from it. Can you link that, Washer? Do you have that? No, I don't have those two clips. If you have them, that'd be awesome. From Blur, awesome. I will add this. Oh yeah, Blur. I had a long discussion with Blur on in which event was it? I think it was DreamHack in Germany, the one that Leffen went to. Austria? You can post them here. You can post them here. I don't think you get banned for it in this chat. If you do, then I'll unban you immediately. I don't remember what the bot does. But Blur was shitting on box players in Twitch chat on the BTS stream for like an hour straight. And every box player lost. That was the most fucked up part. Every box player lost. Where he just like was shitting on them while they were losing and calling them cheaters while they were losing. And it was the most annoying thing. Where regardless what your stance is, that's one thing I'm gonna bring up as like you just, why? What's the point? And then I went on, because of that, I went on 4-side fights and debate, like talked about it with him. And yeah, that was miserable. But it happened. I'm watching the Mango clip right now. They are... I kind of like the points they're making. Okay, yeah, I kind of like the clip you linked me. That's a good clip to bring up for this. Wait, wow, both of you... Wait, Sauce. Joshua one starts at... Oh, this is a different one? Wait, no. this is the same thing. Starts at 4:35. Okay. 4:35. He's arguing that the biggest problem is moderation, which I agree with. Why didn't people link me this stuff on Twitter before? Before I started the stream, I told everyone to link me stuff, but this is perfect. I am compiling all of this for the discussion. Chef deleted a ton of stuff. Let me actually show you this so that I stop being annoying and just talking to myself. But right now we've got the Bobby Rage clip, the HBox clip, the Blur thing, Mango talking about it, Joshman talking about it, and now we have the discussion here. But it seems like most people disagree. Sure, they need a nerf, but we haven't figured out a way to do it yet. No reason to ban it. Playing versus box fun is fun. Fox is fun to me anyway, lol. Narcos is on now too. Okay, so this, some transparency. This was what I was referring to, is that Knuckles DM'd me and said, yo, I want to start talking about box nerfs. And I was like, there's already a group of people talking about box nerfs and trying to get something going. So hopefully, this implies that they got in contact with each other, which is good. Lesson. I just wish these things felt less in the shadows. One argument I'm gonna make. Like, it's very awkward not knowing which of my techniques I should even expect to lose. Is there any way I can better keep myself up to date on these subjects, short of hitting up DMs? On Smashbox, I can do ledge drops with a down input that is below the fastball threshold. As far as I know, this is legal every time I've checked. I wouldn't be surprised if I lose this too. C-down def is awkward in the thumb for aerial interrupts. I'm sure I can make it work. For aerial interrupts, it's super easy. For ledge dashes with the default layout, it's not. But if you change layout, then it's also easy for ledge dashes. Will I lose super wave dash, or will it be state aware? No, it would only be dashed opposite dash in one frame would get affected, if anything. Before we can even test this, we would need to have a way to detect boxes and apply the changes only to them and not affect GameCube controllers, which hasn't even been started as far as actual work goes. Oh, so they're talking about doing it on client side and not doing it on controller side. So basically, this is just the same argument I was making, that it's too in the shadows and the like discussion isn't available anywhere. Oh no, I mean, it's not your fault it got deleted, is it? Thing that bothers me is how many pros are so hard against it without more than a few hours ever on them. Wait, what? No. At least Leffen has decent experience. Yeah, I mean, I don't remember who. Actually, I should put the Reddit thread, because the Reddit thread did have some decent things in it. This, I think, is a pretty big deal. I'm gonna actually, I don't have to screenshot it. Gonna have multiple of these up for. Actually, I can permalink the comment. Permalink. There we go. And there we go. This is the one I was after. Cool. Nice. Sustainability is a huge thing. Have my box for like 3-4 years now and zero issues the whole time. Yeah, I mean, I haven't done like shit to my frame one for the same reason. Now, before we do anything, I'm gonna see if I can add a display capture that isn't. I'm gonna have 2 of these, I think. Maybe I just put it here. That's one, and this should work for all of them. Oh, this is scrolled down, that's why. Okay, so these should work now. Yeah, they're all spaced correctly. This one doesn't, so I'm gonna add a different one for this one. Rename Reddit. Can't believe I'm making a source just for Reddit. They've never heard of sources in their lives. Display capture. I needed to not kill my tabs. What's the... It's this one that kills my tab. Keep this... Or keep all tabs for the session. One hour. There we go. Cool. That's the YouTube one. So this should work for Twitch as well. And it should work for this. And for this. Cool. So that's the YouTube one. And then we add a final one for Twitter. Sorry about this. I just want to make sure this goes smoothly. I'm starting in just a second. I'm starting in like a minute or two. Nice. So that's the Twitter one. Cool. Can we talk about OEM firmware for Frame 1 and Box are both biased in favor of Fox and how that might affect nerfs? I think you're wrong, which is also something I'm going to bring up. I think it's biased in favor of Peach, Yoshi, and Falcon, specifically. I think Fox is middle of the line. Not middle of the line, but he's like high tier in it, but I don't think he's top tier. I think the character that's the most biased in favor of is clearly Peach by like a long shot. But it's... The issue is that there's a ton of characters that get unfairly affected. For example, like Luigi, Samus, Ices. Whereas Dash characters like Falcon just straight up only have buffs. Like there is zero downsides to playing Falcon. Which says a lot then. If I think that Falco and Fox like aren't top, the fact that they are benefited a lot as well, it's kind of crazy, right? I do believe Goom Waves are more ban-worthy than Box. I think that's a fair source for Goom Waves specifically because of the way they like macro a ton of inputs. I might add this was common knowledge from Box users at this point, but I don't think GameCube controller users are aware of it. Oh yeah, the Box Wave Dash nerf is a Fox buff. Yeah, I know. It's such a crazy thing. I think it's so funny that it's like, oh, it's nerfed, bro. It's nerfed. Does the Twitter thing work for this if I do Twitter? Not really. It's fine. I'll probably not show this on stream, but I'll mention it for sure. Happy to hear that, Jab. This is definitely going on YouTube for sure. But we got like 40 people in here, so I guess it's time to start. Sorry for stalling for a long time, but I thought I should let people trickle in, right? So, what are we dealing with? I'm not doing any like hello YouTube bullshit. I'm just getting into it. I will not be replying to chat much at all. I will be mostly ignoring chat, except for between topics. I'm gonna be looking through chat and going and like taking questions between every like category of topics, and I'll mostly be monologuing for everything in between, right? So if you don't want me to miss anything, feel free to like put it when I start taking questions, right? So I think I've got 1, 2, 3, 4. I've got 4 topics, with the last one being the longest. Do you think if the box gets banned, nerfed, and so should all these other things, is fair or an excuse to stall the nerfs? Complex thing. I'm gonna get into it in the discussion, but the answer is it's complicated. What's happening right now? Good morning. So we might as well start with that. I think that's a fair way to start. That's a good way to start. So wait, is this? Okay, what happened was, the reason we're having this discussion, and the name of this stream is box controller equals cheating question mark, is because not too long ago, as in I am talking yesterday, I believe, Hungrybox showed this clip, or had this clip, where he says, so he says that all the top players think that boxes are cheating, and he has previously been arguing for a ban. He deleted those tweets. He made them when he was drunk, so take that with a grain of salt. But he did talk about banning them, and he talked about how like bullshit Fox getting buffed on boxes. So that's what prompted this discussion today. I think it's long overdue that I both make a video on this and also like talk about it so that people like know what my opinion is, because I've had to repeat myself a lot, and I feel like having it all in one place is very useful. So that's why today we're gonna discuss this from a ton of different perspectives. Well, we can start with the personal one, right? Because like obviously I have a law in the game for this. Like I'm probably the most biased party, since a nerf or a ban to the box directly affects me super negatively, probably more so than everyone except maybe the manufacturers, like Greg and Hacks probably gets affected worse than me, but for anyone else, I think I'm like the most affected, right? So from a personal point of view, hearing stuff like that fucking sucks for 2 reasons. It sucks for the reason that hearing people complain, I can generally tune out, right? Like if I hear a random Twitch chatter go like, oh, boxes are fucking cheating, or like yesterday I was on ranked streaming, right? And this guy comes in and goes like, I can't wait until your controller gets banned so that you go down to like top 20 Europe, fucking scrub. And I checked this message history, and it was really funny because like a week before at an earlier stream, he'd been in the chat and gone fucking, I can't wait until the box is banned and you're top 50. So, I mean, at least the opinion there went up. But in most cases, what they're really saying is, I'm carried by the box, and, you know, sure, I could get mad, but generally it's just really funny when people say that, because, you know, it's... First of all, my results beforehand were like on the trend up at roughly the same speed, but then COVID happened, and COVID was a black hole for a lot of things. So it looks like I exploded out of the scene and like was 10 times better afterwards. So I completely get that. And but having random say stuff like that, it's whatever. I don't mind. I don't have to care about what they say, but hearing top players complain is an entirely different deal, because I don't want to tune out other top players, right? I want to being included is maybe too strong of a word, but I care about both what they think in terms of competition and then also like generally their thoughts on the game, right? So that's one reason. Like, I don't want to just tune them out, even though I could. So, for example, the non-asterisk meme, like every box win should have an asterisk at the top, is sure, it's funny, but it's also incredibly annoying because it's something I get parroted in my stream. It's something that happens, a lot. It just gets said all the time, and I know that there are a huge amount of people that believe it, and probably none does too. So, like, if I'm with none at an event, I legitimately struggle to, like, socialize just because I know he, like, dislikes how I play, or, like, that I play on the box and stuff. And, even if he says he doesn't, the fact that meme is something he parrots a lot, it gets to me, And that's just one of the reasons. The other reason is that I can't do anything about it. Like, no amount of me complaining about it fixes it. Like, I can say, oh, it sucks, and sure, woohoo, poor me, But if it sucks, then it does. And to be fair, if 100 people say that it sucks to play me, and I say, I wish you didn't feel that way, I mean, those 100 people probably also thinks it sucks, right? Like, they'd rather just not play me. And they'd rather just not play the mid-level Fox that has perfect shines and, quintuple shines your shield and then does, like, perfect tech chasing and, perfect pressure, gravity nairs and all that stuff. They just don't want to play that person. And at that point, it's just like, what can I really do? I can complain about it, but all that does is just make people angrier, right? So that's the second reason it sucks. I don't have an actionable, like, defense or anything I can really realistically do to make this better on, like, a personal level. So if I can't complain about it to fix it, what can we do? Well, we can, like, talk about it. And that's what I want to do now, because I don't think the discussions have generally been very productive so far. So that's the main point of today's stream, is that I've got a bunch of topics lined up with just my personal thoughts, some objective, like, stats, some subjective thoughts, and, more, like, meta discussions. And I will be taking questions in between all of them. So given that I just prefaced it with the personal stuff, we can start taking some questions. I think people should have to play on a box for a month minimum to complain, so they understand literally anything about playing on them. And I think the funny part about that is you could argue that about characters, and you could argue that about like seed jumping, and you could argue that about anything like that. And I think it's unfair to say that about one thing but not everything else. So I don't think that's a very fair point. I think it's completely fair to have criticisms about how it is to play against a box user without having to play box yourself. But I think it's silly to speak like an authority on it. There's a difference between complaining and saying, this feels like bullshit, and another thing to say, I fucking hate how broken X thing is, when you may not understand it. How do I prove as a Twitch chatter that I played for a month on a box, and do I have to do a month on a frame 1 to complain about those? Exactly, like that's the thing, right? There's layers to it. And also, how can you tell that a month is enough? I'll get into that more in a little bit, but it's a big thing where it's like, it's a rabbit hole for sure. Regardless, there's not a lot yet, so I've just prefaced it. I just wanted to answer that one, so that was an excuse to see kind of like what the format is going to be, because I will be monologuing for a bit and then going to that. So instead of just waiting for more questions before we've even started, let's instead go to the next thing, which is the like objective stats, right? So from a stats standpoint, boxes are not especially problematic. They don't dominate top level play, and they have not seen widespread adoption. Hacks performed about as good or worse as he did on controller, but to be fair, he was gone from the game for ages, so the fact that he still performed about as well is still like, you could argue that that's Box being broken, right? Especially given that, you know, the meta seems to have changed a decent bit from that point, and other players who have taken long breaks generally don't come back to perform at exactly the same level afterwards. But currently, me, Soppy, and Swift are the only relevant box players in the current top 50, and none of us like crack top 10. We are not amazing S plus tier players, right? Like, we're not the Sane, the Amsa, the Mango. We're not dominating the playing field, right? And there's just 3 of us in the top 50 as far as I'm aware. I think that's might change with the new power ranking coming out, but for now I think we are the only 3, if I'm not mistaken. With that said, here's the important thing, and something I think is often ignored from every like box player who brings up this argument, is that the situation is very similar to wobbling, and we banned that. We can ban the box if we can ban wobbling. It's a similar minority of players and has a similar consideration where even if boxes aren't dominating the playing field, if people hate playing against it, we can just ban it. We can just straight up ban it. Like, there's no reason that that has to be very different than with Ice Climbers, because like effectively we did shadow ban Ice Climbers. It took a while for Slug to come up, but clearly a lot of the player base quit or plays way less now or switch characters. So effectively we shadow banned the character, and the reason we did that was because people fucking hate playing against wobbling. They hate playing against wobbling, and if people hate playing against box, then that's honestly all you really need to argue with. If you want to have the technical arguments, then you should back them up. But if you just want to say, I hate playing against box players, it feels like complete dog shit. Like, it feels unfair, and like they're not working for their kills, it feels like they're not working for their wins, then just say that, like, straight up. It's the exact same argument as for wobbling, and you could just argue the same thing for boxes. So regardless of what the stats say, it does not have to be dictated by what me and other box players are performing like right now. And even if it was, I'm fairly sure you could just argue that as soon as we do super well, that, you know, it's too late now. Would you really want to ruin like their careers or whatever? And as such, there's no real like time where you can justify it without having pushback. So I feel like that stat of how many box players are like super good or, you know, dominating the playing field doesn't really matter. Like practically, you could just argue that this feels really annoying. And to like highlight that, we've got the best clip, the singular best clip, right? Like, we've got this. This sums it up completely, right? So, I mean, you could just say that, right? Like, you don't have to have an argument. You don't have to say something super meaningful or, you know, give a technical reason. You could just say, I hate playing against this. It's bullshit. We should ban it. So, that's my first point, is that anyone who uses stats to defend it, or vice versa, I don't think necessarily is making as strong of a point as they might think they are, because again, nothing is stopping us from just saying this is bullshit and moving on. So that's my, like, tangent on stats. Any input on that, like, from chat? This clip makes me so uncomfortable. Yeah, it makes the clip... Wait, did you see in the Bobby Big Balls clip, his fucking landline phone falls on the ground? It makes the clip funnier every year you watch. That's funny, yeah. Box Pika is definitely broken, especially Smashbox Pika with custom angles. I mean, that's part of the thing, right? The part of the argument is that there's no moderation. Then when there's no moderation, you can simply just, like, put in whatever you want. I will also say that Swift argues that edge canceling up B isn't that useful because it's very telegraphed and has, like, a ton of startup, so it's not as good of an option as people think. But that doesn't necessarily have to mean anything when, you know, simply the fact that you can't really do it on controller but you can do it on box is still a, like, significant difference. If he pulls it out, that means that it has some use case, right? Like, even for just intimidation. I've talked about this before, where the biggest buff that box players get by far is not that the controller is more consistent or that the controller is stronger. It's the fact that people tilt from frame one when you get into the set. You start the set with a huge mental edge. There are so many times when I'll play someone and I can tell immediately that they are mad playing me, and that's a huge bonus factor. I mean, obviously yelling into the mic about why you hate playing against things isn't a reason for banning things, or at least it shouldn't be. I mean, that's how you ban wobbling, but I will argue that I think it's extremely unproductive in the short term, and I think it's way better to just, like, run, for example, a community poll, which is something I'm going to get into later in the talk. But to start with, it's just more of a personal thing, where if that is how you feel, you can just say it. Obviously, preferably not like that, but you can just say it. I personally hate that that clip exists, because after that clip came out, talking about box players as cheaters became 10 times more normalized, and now I get it at everywhere I go. It's just unavoidable. And that is pretty much entirely because of that clip. It just, like, opened the floodgates, and I think that's extremely annoying, and I can't lie and say that I feel no resentment towards Bobby for that, because he is directly responsible for it. But again, if every top player feels the same way, then eventually it was going to happen, and it was going to come out like that. So realistically, it doesn't matter in the grand scheme of things, right? Because I would face that trouble eventually. It probably just sped it up a little bit. And also, assuming that this has to reach a boiling point at some point because things aren't being done, I'd rather that happen faster than slower, right? So, for example, if straight up people decide to just ban the controller, that it's preferable to me to ban it early, so I know to stop investing my time, maybe go play, like, I don't know, the new Street Fighter or something, or, you know, get a phobe that works, hopefully, and switch to that. You know, whatever my options may be, I prefer it to happen faster sooner than later. What do you think annoys people the most about playing versus box players? The dashdown speed, or... It's the precision, right? It depends on the character you're playing against. But for example, there's a mechanic with grabs where you can buffer stick inputs for 1 frame after every grab. And this is important because this doesn't always come into play for GameCube controllers due to how polling works, where if you flick the stick, you often don't get the buffer window. So doing stuff like down throw upper as Falcon versus a ton of characters is significantly more consistent on box controllers in some cases, because if I press the button in that 1 frame buffer window, I always get the buffer. But if someone flicks the stick during that 1 frame buffer window, sometimes they don't read it, and now you didn't get it because you got read 1 frame late, right? So having that means that, you know, it's more consistent for me. Also, I always get the furthest 1.0 cardinal, which doesn't matter that often compared to what people would think, but when it does matter, it is a huge deal. And also, like, a lot of the nerfs aren't necessarily nerfs, right? For example, there's a long-ass document on why the Wave Dash nerf is a buff for Fox, which I will link in chat. I'll also put it in the description of the video. I'm not going to go through it right now, but the arguing that only having a few set of angles does not necessarily outweigh the benefit of perfect control, right? Like, I've played against Saf Blandan, which is a player that plays Luigi in Sweden on a box, on a frame 1. And he has the nerfed wave dash angles, but his movement is fantastic because he has perfect control of it. So even if you're more limited, if your options are more reliable and stronger, that could very easily outvalue that. So even the nerfs don't necessarily have to be nerfs, you know? There are a lot of arguments you can make for it. The dash speed, the SDI, the wave dash, the consistency in general, the easier ledge dashes, the, you know, all of that stuff just being more reliable by virtue of it being a digital input is all good reasons to, you know, dislike the controller. And, you know, that I think all of those are valid. Instant aerials, wait, what do you think? Instant aerials, consistent out of shield options, ledge dashes are just as easy with claw. The only thing that feels stronger to me is the dash dance. Disagree. Instant aerials are not equally easier with claw, because if you use C-stick, then you still have an analog input that gets read inconsistently, and you can also have C-stick pod, among other things. It's harder to do ASDI down with C-stick on controller than it is on box. Consistent out of shield options, I will agree with, are basically the same for the absolute majority of them. I think talking about shine out of shield and like nair out of shield as a box thing is super silly when claw exists, but doing instant aerials and doing stuff from grab is definitely easier on box than it is on controller. I'd be out of melee if hard banned, but I would prefer it sooner than later. A lot of the controller shit is way too complicated for most players to understand. I don't think that having a PhD should be needed to know if a controller is unfair or not. I think that's a fair point, where you can't really expect everyone to be fully educated before having an opinion. And I think that's a, like, very fair reason to, dislike the controller and wanting it banned. Mango wins tournaments without wave dashing if you use your cards right. What? Mango does not win tournaments. What are you talking about? He does not inherently nerf himself to win tournaments. Maybe he did back in like 5 years ago, 6 years ago, but he's not done that. There are some inherent nerfs for some simpler techniques more difficult on box 2. Give an example. Are you what I want to know if there's literally anything except Wangtia that box is worse at. I mean, there are some stuff that just straight up doesn't work. I will say that doing platform stuff is harder, in my opinion. Almost everything relating to platforms is more annoying. Except shield dropping. I think shield dropping is the same, basically. But doing wavelands feels very limited. And, for example, as Falco, the fact that you can't just, like, hold, like, a slight crouch to do shine, and you will fall through the platform, also becomes annoying. There's a ton of stuff like that where it feels harder, but that doesn't show up. And a lot of the time, you still just get it. So you can argue, the main thing is, everything that is harder on box, you can argue to be a skill issue. Whereas the same is not true for a controller. And this is actually a point I haven't written down, but it is worth talking about, where because the box is perfectly consistent, as long as something is possible to do, it is inherently possible to do reliably, except for like frame perfect links, for example, because those are just, yeah, you get it. But like, if you can waveland on a platform and get a follow-up, then you can do it, even if it's tight. If it's a 2-frame window, it's consistent. You just have to be better at it. Whereas on a GameCube controller, your stick could just fail. Your stick could just say fuck you, and then it doesn't work. So, you know, that also plays into it, where having that reliability both makes you play more securely. Like, you play with more confidence, but it also means that your opponent, you know, if a box player messes up, that's on them. Yeah, I definitely think the reliability is the biggest thing that sold me on it, even with, you know, nerfs or having less options in some cases. I mean, technically, right now, I'll give you an example of something that doesn't work on Frame 1 that works on a box controller. The one thing that the box has over the Frame 1, and also something the Smashbox has, is CC walk. There are angles that don't take you out of crouch, but make you walk as soon as you stop being in crouch, which gives you CC walk, where you can CC a move and then instantly start walking forward afterwards. And this is impossible on the Frame 1 specifically, but it's possible on box, and it's possible on Frame 1, on Smashbox. Given that it's possible on 2 out of 3 of the like major controllers, can you really argue that it's like fair? In the same way that a box player doesn't have access to triple STI like a Frame 1 player does, or pivot up tilts like a Frame 1 player does. I think the fact that there's no moderation there also makes it very hard to critique, because, you know, I don't expect the average player to know that, oh, the box can CC walk, but the Frame 1 it can't, and stuff like that, right? Or, oh, on the Smashbox you can program in whatever angle you want, and differentiating all of that as a player that doesn't play on them, I think, is kind of an unfair expectation. The box wouldn't be cheating if it had an analog stick instead of directional buttons, the end. I'm inclined to agree, and I've promised to buy a Smash stick, except that controller does not exist, and I'm starting to believe that it will never exist. So, you know, good argument. Product does not exist, so given that, it's not a good solution. Smashbox has a standing shine angle. Yeah, that's another one. Fire stalling easier like a week ago too. Yeah, I mean, given that the manufacturers can keep stealth buffing the controller, there's also no real regulation there yet. But I'll get to it. I'm starting to feel like the questions are running out, so I should probably keep moving. Oh, that's a good point, is that it's not only the box controller that has macros and, you know, specific states that override other states and stuff like that. The Goom Wave and also the Foob, if you wanted to, both have macros that enable some really degenerate stuff. For example, I'm pretty sure the dash back out of crouch on a Goom Wave is like a 4-frame window, because it kills all of the inputs that aren't a dash back out of crouch. And that is ridiculous. It's far easier than on a box controller and any other GameCube controller by like an insane factor. You will never miss it on a Goom Wave. Given even, I don't even think you need to practice. You can pick up the controller and it's gonna work immediately. So that's also something worth pointing out, is that it's not only the box that has stuff like that. With that said, I think it's time to move on. The next thing is mostly subjective, in that I've argued that objectively there's no real reason to ban the box. It's all mostly tied to feelings, which I think is perfectly fair. If you say facts don't care about your feelings or stuff like that, that's not true, and that we are playing a children's party game where we made up the rules 10, 15, 20 years ago and keep changing them to this day. We banned wobbling not long ago, and we've changed character rule sets, we add, you know, stalling rule sets, we changed stages, and all of that. So, you know, given all of that, you can't argue that there's an objective way to play Melee. And I've played versus mid-level box players. I've played against players that feel like they have no fundamentals, but they dash perfectly, and they just have better footsies than anyone else, and just like whiff punish you better and then combo harder than they should at that skill level, and then they randomly don't know how to walk. And that feels extremely jarring. At this point, I don't think a lot of people feel that it's super jarring to play versus me, because I kind of know everything to do on a box controller, so I don't really have holes like that. But against a newer box player, it definitely does feel like they are just better at the stuff that they're good at than they would be on a GameCube controller. And I will say, if I play Fox for a long duration on a GameCube controller, I inherently slow down in order to like let my hands catch up to my brain. I guess that's not the right way to phrase it. It's more like I just get tired at playing full speed Fox on a game controller for a while, whereas that never happens on a box controller. So even though I can perform, like, I can play just as fast on a game controller for 15 minutes, and then I'm tired. Whereas I don't have that with box controllers, which is also a reason to, not like it. Another thing that I think is extremely important in this discussion is that inherently some characters cheat way more than others due to how nerfs can't be distributed to affect every aspect of the game equally. For example, like, look at Luigi or Ice Climbers who rely on wave dashes, and then you give them fewer wave dash angles, and their dash isn't very good at all. And then you look at Falcon, who barely uses his wave dash and gets perfect dash and gets perfect, instant aerials and drifts and all that. The fact that you can look at the controller and say, oh, it's balanced, I don't think it's ever going to happen across every character. I think you can make it balanced for a few characters, but I don't think you can actually make it fairly balanced for every character unless you give different characters different, like, valid settings. If you give Samus good wave dashes, but, not too good, and then you give Falcon a worse dash, but, maybe okay wave dashes or whatever, like, you nerf some aspects of specific characters, sure, you could maybe do that, but the amount of work that would entail is, like, astronomical. And it would also not be a agreed upon solution ever. It would take years, and it would not be ever a consensus. There's no universe where everyone's agreeing that, oh, we finally balanced it so that Peach, Yoshi, Falcon, Ice Climbers, Luigi, Samus, Jigglypuff, and Fox and Falco are all balanced. That's never going to happen. Right now, I think Peach, Yoshi, and Falcon stand out as characters with virtually no nerfs and buffs across the entire board. You might think that's silly given that Yoshi uses a ton of wave dashes, but he gets to do all of the stuff he wants to do, and a lot of it is reliant on drift, which is better on box controllers, and his all of his, like, off the ledge stuff, and there's so many situations where the reliability factor matters way more for him, and he also doesn't really wave dash in neutral in that sense. He often does it on platforms, and you don't need good wave dashes for that. You will just go off them with even the, like, quote-unquote bad ones the box has, right? So that fact means that you don't get any real disadvantages with that character. And for Peach, gets access to a lot of really, really difficult tech that is arguably not humanly viable on a GameCube controller. Whereas for Falcon, I don't think he super benefits nearly as much as those two characters, and even Fox and Falco, I think, benefit more than Falcon. However, none of the nerfs mean anything for Falcon. He feels incredibly good to play. He is by far the most, like, reliable, good starter character on a box, where you just do stuff and it will work flawlessly every time. And it's kind of ridiculous how I look at him and I'm like, oh, he's just a better character by, like, a decent chunk. Like, it's not like, oh, he's 2% better. It's like, oh, this character is 20% better on box than he is on GameCube controller. And I don't know if that is, like, an agreed upon statement, but I think that he is a ridiculously good character on the box. And then, obviously, on the other side, we have Samus and Luigi, who both should be screwed, I would think, on paper. However, I've talked to some players of both characters, right? And, like, for example, there's Techno Spider on Samus, and to preface this, Techno Spider plays on Smashbox, which is an entirely different can of worms, but mostly because of moderation issues and stuff. But even without that, the fact that you get humanly viable short hop fast fall missile cancels, reliable, is so huge in so many matchups, where on GameCube controller, the input to do a smash missile, fast fall, auto cancel from a short hop is so insanely difficult that doing it as a, like, core neutral tool, I don't think is even remotely close to reliable. Like, I don't think you should do it on a GameCube controller. But on a box, it's fairly easy. There's a lot of stick inputs that you have to do in a very tight window, but none of them are frame perfect, and it's pretty easy if you don't have to care about travel time. And that changes some matchups super wildly. Like, I think Marth struggles a lot if you can do that reliably. Why? Because clanking missile sucks, because you go through like a ton of lag. And normally this is fine because they have to like commit harder, but like FD, for example, gets way better for Samus if they have access to this. They can, it sort of becomes like a Falco laser where if you clank it, you get lag, and if it hits, it's worse, but it has more startup, so you can punish it in startup. But all of that said, it's just a technique that isn't really viable on GameCube controller, that is core for how you can theoretically play some matchups, and it's just like not possible on GameCube controller. Does that balance out the fact that the wave dashing is worse? Maybe. Maybe it actually does. Maybe the character is better in some matchups and worse in other matchups, or just straight up a better character. I don't know. On paper, she feels worse. When I play her, and I don't use this because I haven't practiced it, I think she feels pretty bad to wave dash around with and like walk around with. When I play Luigi, I feel like it's pretty hard, but then I look at Soft Blondon, who I mentioned before as the box Luigi, and he just like moves extremely well and does stuff that I know is really hard, but I mean, it looks easy. That's another thing too, right? Where everything that looks or feels hard as the player of a box controller looks easy on the other side. If you mess up on a box, it's very obvious, but if you don't, then everything just looks extremely easy. With that said, it's very hard to like say something accurate about the controller's relative strength when it changes so much between characters, and you can't really boil it down to any singular nerf being like a universal thing, right? Like, Isis doesn't care for dashback out of crouch, they slide too far anyway. Fox barely cares about wave dashing. Who cares? It's like, compared to, or Fox, wrong answer, like Falco, right? Like, those things, as long as it's reliable, it's fine. There's a ton of things like that where you're unsure of who like has what patch, what happens with what, and all of that. And I mean, given that, it's just a really difficult conversation to have. We have a clip from Sora, which is him talking about the frame 1 that I think sums up the problem like super well. Point is, you can think that the stock controller is fine. That basically doesn't matter in the current state, because currently, you can run whatever the fuck you want on it. You can run any patch you want, no one is ever going to check it. I have thought about, this is not like an authoritarian thing, or like, authoritarian, it's not something I feel like an authority on that I can really say how easy or hard it would be, but I feel like you could probably do something with Slippy files where you can just check if they use the legal angles, the legal like values for everything, because you get all of the inputs in a Slippy file, right? But then we had to decide on that and actually make a rule set for it. And until that is done, no one has any idea what patch you're running on, and no one has any idea what your specific controller can and cannot do. I want to give you the most basic example of this, one that I encounter all the time. People tell me that the box is nerfed, and the box doesn't have triple SDI or pivot up tilts. And they tell me this in context of netplay and Dolphin, when that's not true in that context. It is soon, I believe. I believe the newest patch is going to have it work on Dolphin, but up until this point, none of the box nerfs to SDI or pivot up tilts have worked. They don't work on netplay. They don't. They work on GameCube setups. They work on Wii setups, but they don't work on Dolphin. So if you lose to someone on netplay and they say that, then those players could very well have just done that. They could have just used those options, and you, like, obviously you'd see if they did pivot up tilt, but can you really tell if they went for triple SDI but only got 2? No, you can't. So it's historically, at least, not been a real differentiator, and not everyone knows this. This is not common knowledge. So it's like the argument doesn't really work if you don't know that, and if that's just one example, right? Like, also, easy way to ignore the wave dash nerf, right? Back in the day when I started on box, accidentally was cheating, and this annoys me so much because I found out like a week and a half afterwards. This was on my when I got the box. I went in Dolphin settings and I changed the button for wave dashing because I wanted to rebind and try a different layout for Falcon, right? I didn't feel like I needed the default layout. I'd rather move Z and R and switch them. If you do that, the nerf breaks and you get perfect wave dashes. I should have noticed immediately, but I was playing Falcon exclusively at the time, so I wasn't wave dashing that much, and I also hadn't played for long enough to really use all the wave dash angles super well. But it's so obvious when you just do it, and all it takes is that you click like switch a button on Slippy. You can even, I think you can even just switch the 2 shield buttons so that you have L and R and just switch the 2, and now you have perfect wave dashes on Dolphin with no real change in how the controller works otherwise. It just gives you perfect wave dashes. And who knows this? Almost no one. Almost no one has that information. And if you look at netplay events, you know, like, that could just happen. Someone could just do that. I had to ask. Now you have a rebind program for the frame 1 in the beta. If you opt into the beta, it might be out, I'm not sure. And on the box, what I ended up doing was I just opened it up and then I went in and switched to wires. You know, I just move them around and then it works. Then you have the nerf. But you could also just go in Dolphin and change a setting and bam, nerf is gone. And the fact that that's possible is also really silly. So no real oversight and no real way to check. You can never know what the opponent is playing on, what is broken and what isn't broken. And I mean, I think regardless of what your stance is on legality or what nerfs they should get, that is just like objectively silly. With that said, regardless of how not controversial I think that is, I will say, my opinion should hold almost no meaning here, since I'm like the most the most biased person in the discussion, right? If you ban it, if you nerf it, you directly impact me super negatively. So take everything I say with a grain of salt, but those 2 facts are still facts. But like what I think about it and all that is not very important in the grand scheme of things, right? The fact that the controller buffs and nerfs characters in different ways is pretty similar in my mind to how Puff doesn't need notches and doesn't care about, you know, modded controller stuff as much as a Fox would. But it's on like 4 levels above that, right? Like if you look at that, and people were making fun of HBox, right? Like, I'm just using a stock controller. I don't even have wave dash notches. That's just kind of because the character doesn't need it, right? But if you think that's one level, then this is like not the next one, but then like up here, where it's just like, it's such a big change where it does so much for some characters and so little for other characters. If you dislike that aspect of the game, then it's perfectly reasonable to want it banned on just those grounds, because it's much more egregious than it is for controller modding, and it's just like, an issue that I don't see a way around until we standardize, we standardize the controller to specific values. But even then, if you do one universal set of values, then I think it's impossible, just strictly impossible, to make it fair for every character. I don't think that's even remotely possible. Now, I will say, I've skirted around the topic. I have personally been approached at least like a dozen times from a few people. I don't know if it's public. Since it's not public, I'm probably not gonna name names, but some community figures when it comes to making a rule set for box controllers, right? And they've asked me for if I think certain nerfs are okay, if I think they would break the controller, and if I want to trial them. And I have said yes to trialing them, and then I haven't heard anything basically for over a year now. I got approached again by someone else, and they basically said, hey, we want to do a rule set for boxes. And now I think both groups are working together, so maybe something gets done there. But I think the biggest issue in this entire discussion is the fact that there is no transparency on what is going on. There is no timeline, and because of that, everything is just festering under the surface, and everyone who hates the controller is just sitting there, and it's like, nothing's happening. What am I waiting for? What am I waiting for? It's just, dead silent. And when it's dead silent, I think people get angry, and I think a lot of the hate that gets like thrown in the player's way and stuff like that, and like for a good example, I think is I actually really appreciated this. Two different takes. I beat Ginger, and Ginger the day after had a long thread about how boxes are broken, which I appreciated that he waited until like a day passed, so I didn't just see it immediately after. And Hbox actually walked up to me after I beat him at Smash Summit and was like, well played, dude. You deserve that. Don't let anyone take it away from you. And then he like walked away, and I thought that was super sick. Like, even though we just played the clip of Hbox just like talking about how he hates box controllers, he at least had the decency to do that. So on a personal level, I don't hate anyone who has this opinion. I don't feel any need to be like, what's the word, like confrontative, like combative. Like I don't want to be mean or rude or anything, but it's still incredibly annoying from both sides, right? Like, I hate that it's just like, I can tell when people hate playing against me. It's pretty obvious. And I can also tell when people stomach me because I don't use stuff like pivot up tilts and triple SDI, but they hate the controller. And it's just incredibly annoying to be in that situation. But I also realized that having no change in sight and nothing like planned, and just like sitting there while nothing is happening, I understand why you would just like make noise about it after every like loss or whatever. It's just kind of like a way to let off steam, right? Because you don't know what you're waiting for. You don't know what you're looking forward to. So the situation, I think, is extremely unproductive. I think it's basically worthless. Like, we haven't gotten anywhere since like a year or plus, I think. I think we're in almost exactly the same state as then, except for the fact that people are just getting angrier, and that's understandable, but I don't really know what to do about it in the short term. So that's my take on the like subjective feelings on the issue. But I can probably take some questions now before I move on. If you want an update, yeah, I would love an update. Oh, Knuckles, I see the... Yeah, okay, so one of the people that approached me is Knuckles for rule set changes. I can give you one, lol. Well, the issue isn't about giving me one, it's about giving the community one. Like, I think the reason transparency is so important here is because, like, everyone is affected, and when there's no transparency, it's a problem, because you... Like, if I know, I can tell people, yo, there are changes coming, and then nothing happens for a while. And then it's like, basically, I just become like the middleman. So it's rough when it's not just like a I'm not saying that any individual should have to post this, but just like, oh, there is a rule set discussion happening. Here are things that have been discussed. We are currently on our way to talking with Fizzy about implementing exchange, or, you know, we are talking to TOs about implementing this in the rule set. You know, like, having a public statement about that is like the only thing I can see that would be a meaningful change to the, I guess, like, culture that is currently around the issue. So the reality is this: we can't give a date because we are doing this in our spare time, which is fair, but 99% of people don't know that it's happening at all. Like, I can tell people, but I don't have the voice of like a Mango or anything. And I get asked constantly to give like, oh, do you know if any change is happening? And it's like, yes, but I don't know details and I can't tell you anything, pretty much. And that's a rough spot to be in, right? So it's just a problem where I think the culture and the complaining and the general, like, you know, I mean, we have the fucking Sheeter clip, right? Wait, why did this start? We have this. My clip disappeared. We have the, okay, I can play this. This is a good example, right? Like, I think this explains the culture that's currently going on. No, no, Knuckles. I don't want to call you right now because I have things I want to go through, and also this should not go through me. This should not go through me. I am not the spokesperson for this. I should not be the person that has to give the information to just like everyone else. I should, like, it's cool when I'm in the know, but I don't want to go through it here in this spot and be the one. Taz has tweeted out what we're working on. Hassie, can you link that? Because I will provide like the all the links to stuff and all that, but but if you tell me, it just means that I have to repeat myself 100 times. If you link the stuff that Taz has said, I can just link that to the next person, and that's a lot easier. So if it's there and it's public, then I can just link that, and that's a lot easier than if I have to, you know, explain it every single time. I'm in the exact same position that you are regarding this, except probably more in the, like, dark about it. But relative to the situation, I have the same problem. There's a tweet a few weeks ago. Do you want me to dig through it? I can dig through it. Let's dig through to the box tweet. I will do this. This should show it. I'm not finding anything yet. Taz, okay. Spoke to practical Taz and Mini Knuckles about controller/UCF stuff extensively and completely agree on all of these changes that were proposed. It's nice to know the progress is being made in the right direction so that smaller scenes without privileges are not left behind. shield drop range up, increase the cover more vanilla controllers, 1.0 cardinals, dash back out of crouch fix, possible other fixes, box control detection for game side box nerfs, travel time simulation, if a detected box presses left on frame 1 or right on frame, this SDA lockout. So I had forgotten about this. I'm gonna bookmark this and also link it in the description of the video later. But importantly, I do want to point out that Pete has yesterday, or not yesterday, it is yesterday, did say that before we can even test this, we would need to have a way to detect boxes and apply the changes to only them and not affect GameCube controllers, which hasn't even been started as far as actual work goes. So, I mean, proposal 2022, okay, this is fine. I'm down for this, but can I use this as like the official one where I just say, yo, this is what we are planning, what we are considering. If I can just say that, then that's fine. That's all I really need personally. But going to me and saying, yo, you should tell people about this, it's just like a problem that I should not be forced to regurgitate the information and then being told stuff like in the dark, I guess. So this is fine. This is good. I'll just post this. But first of all, the fact that it's here, I did not find it from PTAS. Like, I've scrolled a decent bit. And I have not found it from PTAS. And we are now a full month back. So that, I don't know. I wish, so my idea, this doesn't have to be correct or anything, but I feel like this is the type of thing where if there's a collective of people working on it, making just like a group account where it's just like the rule set discussion or whatever is probably a good idea, so that one, it doesn't necessarily have to like target specific people. They don't have to be the spokesperson, and you can just have a collective like, here's the current thing, and then it can be anonymous if you want, is a better idea, because then you don't have to put out who works there and everything. Oh, fair enough, but then TAS has to be the one that puts it out, right? Isn't it better to have a anonymous like group account? Why would that not be better? Regardless, I've stayed on this tangent for too long, but currently the visibility, the knowledge around like box controller discussions is super lacking, and the fact that you can just plug in any software and most top players don't know anything about the situation is just it's just like the reason behind it. Like, I'm not saying it's correct that people are acting the way they are, but they are acting the way they are because they don't know specifics and they have no idea that anything is moving. Because again, I will be perfectly honest and say I was asked to like trial nerfs and stuff over a year ago. I said yes, and since then I haven't heard anything for over a year now, and that is like discouraging. And I get it that you're not that you're doing this in your free time. I didn't ask to call you so you could be our channel of communication for us. I did it because I figured it'd help your video and I didn't mind. Okay, that's fair. I will put that in. Yes. You did not intend to, or no, rather, you did not ask me to be a spokesperson. You just wanted to clarify and figured it would help the video. I appreciate that. That is in the video now. But yeah, point is, it's a really rough spot right now when it comes to communication and I guess not communication, but what's the word? Standardization. There's no standardization. All of the boxes have different values and different things that they're good and bad at, and some are more egregious than others. But when there's no real coherency there, it's very hard to know what you're playing against, and it's very hard to review and go like, I think box is broken because it can do this, and then someone says, actually that box can do this, but this box cannot do this. And that is also a very frustrating place to be. So I get it when, as in the clip I never fully played, I'll replay it now, what they're talking about here. important note with that is that he's wrong. He's wrong on some stuff, but it's not universal. As if you have a Smashbox, it can do everything. There's nothing it can't do. If you have a box, I mean, you can hit triple SDI on game controller sometimes and stuff like that, but if you have a frame 1, you can't CC walk. That's strictly a tech that is pretty useful on GameCube controllers, perfectly realistic to do. Can't do it on frame 1. You can do it on box. And, you know, we have SDI, we have a ton of other stuff, but technically there are some things. But the thing is, there's no parity. Boxes can do this, but frame 1 can't. You know, like, boxes can't do triple SDI, frame 1 can. Boxes can do CC walk, frame 1 can't. You know, it's just no parity between the controllers. And yeah, I think that, like, kind of sums it up. It's a lot of people view it as the great evil that is justifying a lot of minor evils, where because the box is so broken, it opened the floodgates for GameCube controllers to get way more broken than they previously were. And I think that's honestly a pretty fair assessment of how it's been going. But again, I kind of hate how this bleeds into just like hate towards the players and the asterisk shit. But at the same time, I get the frustration. It's such a weird spot because, like, no individual can really do anything about it except complain. And everyone is complaining all the time. That's all that's happening. And that's all that probably will happen for quite some time. With that said, let's move on to the next thing. I've taken a big enough break on this topic right here. The next thing I want to talk about is the kind of like meta discussion. I've touched on it a lot, but I do have a ton of talking points for it, where the discussion, the discourse has been so unproductive and super hostile up until now. Like, it's just all of it. It started with the Bobby Big Balls Sheeter clip, and now we're here, and we all kind of just, I guess, hate each other, I guess. I mean, there's just no real, like, there's no plan of attack. There's no real sense of forward momentum in any way. It mostly feels like a ton of individuals, like, letting out steam. And on a personal level, I find that incredibly fucking annoying. I find it so frustrating, and it is probably the only thing that puts me off playing Melee right now, where, obviously the, like, Panda SWT thing as well, but it is extremely demoralizing, and I wish I wasn't as addicted to the game as I was. But that's just like a moral thing. It's not, that doesn't really necessarily mean anything. If anything, that just means that I'm the same. I'm exactly the same as everyone else in this situation, in that if I'm annoyed, then everyone else is annoyed. And we're all annoyed at each other together. And it fucking sucks, because nothing is gonna happen from being mad at each other. Except that you're gonna do the same thing you did to, like, the ISIS player, which is, like, bully the ISIS players out of the scene, or the Puff players or whatever. I liken it to floaty hate, in a lot of ways. I have a clip here, or not a clip, but an image from Blur, which was said, I think, like, a couple days ago, a day ago. Basically, everyone agreed in the controller backroom that boxes are broken, but no agreements on a nerf or a ban. Talk has died down since then, and TOs aren't gonna implement it. And don't even get me started on goon waves or foobs. And I will say, I think I'm gonna do something that might be a little distasteful. but I will call out Blur in that Blur actually prompted this discussion from the start, in that I argued with Blur for over an hour in Twitch chat at the DreamHack event that Leffen won in or no, did Leffen win? It was the no, he lost. He won. The DreamHack event he won, that Prof got to go to Summit from, where every time a box player was on screen, Blur was in Twitch chat as a moderator, just complaining and shit-talking every box player. Yeah, DreamHack Rotterdam. At DreamHack Rotterdam, for over an hour, every time a box player was on stream, he was like, oh, can we get some real melee? Can we, like, oh, this morph just fares 10 times faster than Sane does. And I got so extremely frustrated that a moderator of the channel was sitting there and shit-talking the players on stream. And it infuriates me that it's okay to do that, because they are just players, and every single box player lost at that event. Every single box player lost when he was criticizing them. He was calling them cheaters, and he was sitting in chat, and he just did it, and then he went, whatever. I can do, why not? And it's like the exact same thing as floaty hate. And the thing is, here's what fucking frustrates me so much. He argued against floaty hate and said that everyone has been bullying floaties out of the scene, and that it's despicable behavior. And then he does the same fucking shit. And that's all I want to say about it, is that that's not okay. And we've talked afterwards, and he's apologized. So that's an important notice, that he's apologized personally to me. But, I mean, everyone else hasn't gotten the apology, and it's in the Twitch chat still, I'm pretty sure. And it's just annoying that that's the way the discourse is going, where shit-talking the players is just perfectly okay. Where it's a thing that I don't think he's alone in. I think a ton of people will go in chats and just, like, yeah, just shit-talk the player if they know they're on a box, for no reason in particular. And it's so useless. It does nothing. All it does is make people angry and hurt people for no reason. And if nothing else, I really just wish the community was better than that. And it has honestly made me reevaluate my, like, how I relate to people in the community, and how I relate to characters in the community, where I refuse to be, like, toxic towards character I might not like playing as much. Like, if I play a Luigi, I'm not gonna be toxic, because I know how that feels like. And sure, that's a good thing, in that now I'm better about it, but it's frustrating that it's just like a trend, regardless of what it means, where it's like, where it's just okay to shit-talk players for the character they play, the controller they use, and instead of getting any pushback about it, it's just like the way things are and should be. And that, to me, feels like a unfortunate state of affairs that could be much better than it is. But I don't know how to get there. So that's one thing that if you're watching this, that I hope you take with you, is that call that shit out, please. It does nothing except hurt individuals. It doesn't lead to some big structural change, and it has, like, no merit whatsoever. I've gotten multiple DMs from complete randoms, as in unranked in their region, asking me for advice on how to manage the hate they get for playing on a box. Like, I had a guy message me and tell me that he stopped going to locals because he just knows everyone hates playing him. And that's a fun thing to do to people. And the thing is, I recognize that this is exactly what Ice Climbers players were talking about with wobbling, and it's exactly what like Jigglypuff players are talking about with all the discourse around that. And, you know, every time Leffen goes, Puff is so free, Hungrybox is cheating, you know, like, the rule set needs to change and all that. It's exactly the same thing. And it's so frustrating that all we are capable of is, I guess, hatred and just, like, distasteful and generally just, like, rude behavior towards people. There's just no sense of, let's fix this, let's solve this, let's work for this or anything like that. It's all just fuck you for playing that character, fuck you for playing on this controller, fuck you for stalling or playing defensively, you know, all that shit. It's just so frustrating. And it's the same thing that we do to Ices, Puff, Peach, Samus, mid-tier players, and we should all just stop. I wish it was that easy. I wish I could just say we should stop, but I don't think it is that easy. But I really wish it was. I really wish it was. There's no timeline. There's no transparency. There's no progress on how things are going. It's all kind of just in a limbo where it wears out people's patience, and when it wears out the top players' patience, they start talking like this and behaving like this, which then gets regurgitated by the people that watch them and, you know, consume their content. And when they normalize it, it becomes it becomes just the way things work. Question. Let's say we implement a rule set that nerfs certain rectangle things, which makes them all banned till they update their firmware. Would you think that's fine? Yes, I would think that's completely fine. I think that's perfectly okay. I think you should probably trial it first, and then but I assume that you're doing that, trialing it with like a couple people or whatever. But if you release a rule set like that, I think that is perfectly fine. And then all the box players and the box creators can complain as much as they want in the meantime. Then the onus is on the creators to patch it. And I think it should be on the creators to patch it at that point. We don't have access to the source code of the game. We can't create a override on the... I don't remember what the exact technique is, but when you use the hitbox in older fighting games, you can sometimes press both back and forward at the same time and get like moving forward while also blocking or whatever it was. Like that shouldn't exist, you know? And it doesn't anymore because developers could just patch it out. Oh, SOCD cleaning, yeah. You could force the developers, or not developers, the controller creators to patch it out, but also the developers there can also just patch it out. We don't have that here. We just have the controller creators, which means if you release a rule set like that, it's on them to do it, which I think is fair because we don't have Nintendo behind us. If Nintendo could fix stuff like that, then they'd do it, but they're useless garbage, so who cares? So I think it's completely fair to release a rule set like that and go, hey, it's banned until you fix this, or rather until you adhere to the new rules. I don't think that's a problem at all. And now we're moving into some of the like final points I want to get to, which is how do we as a community decide whether to ban or nerf the controller? Rotating which top player complains each week doesn't seem super useful, you know? It's what's been happening. So, do we run a community poll? Should viewers have a say in something that realistically only impacts players, at least compared to wobbling? And then, that's kind of like a rhetorical question, but following it up, what nerfs would you want? I've heard dash nerfs before, like travel time for stick inputs, and I think that's a good start, but every time I've asked if that's like enough or what's next, I always get told that no, it's not enough, and I don't know what's next. So that's the frustrating part, right? Is that no one agrees, and I feel like a lot of the people that call for nerfs actually would not be okay with anything except a blanket ban. And that's very frustrating when that's the case. So I think a lot of people think that they would want a nerf and then be okay with it, but I think a lot of them wouldn't be okay with anything except a ban. And I don't know. It's a frustrating spot to be in when I'm not aware of like anything I could do, and it feels like when I argue with those people, I'm arguing in bad faith because they are saying just nerf it and then never giving any specifics. And when they do give specifics, you push them and say, is this enough? They say no. And then I'm like, okay, what's next? No, just nerf it. And at that point, it all becomes extremely unproductive and annoying. And then it's just like, hey, are you sure you don't just want it banned? Because that's what it sounds like to me. So that's the main crux of the issue, from my perspective, is that it's annoying to both be regurgitating information about the box constantly, but also just having the hate directed towards you as a player. And it's funny, right? Because it's the same thing with like, I don't know what the best comparison is. You remember non-wobbling ICs? And how the way you phrase it there is they're one of the good ones? That's how it feels with box controllers for me. Where, because I don't use triple SDI and I don't do pivot up tilts, and I also tend to do more like traditional Fox stuff, I often get told I'm one of the good ones. And that does not make me feel better. That kind of just makes me feel bad as well, because then it's like, if I beat you, it feels bad for both of us, but it hasn't like convinced you in any way that like even if they win, they'll go like, yeah, but if you were doing these things, you know, I would have lost or whatever, and stuff like that, where it's just like, it adds a whole asterisk. It adds an asterisk to the win, where if I win, it's because I was cheating on the controller. If I lose, I could have won if I did all the stuff that I don't want to do because I think it's silly. And it just cheapens the experience, and people generally say, you're one of the good ones, as if that like makes me feel better. But no, in fact, I think that just kind of sucks in every way. Yeah, I hear it a lot. I get told that I'm one of the good ones a lot. Like, and it's also like every time I complain about being targeted for the box hate, everyone's like, no, we're not talking about you. We're talking about every other player, but not you. It's like, last time Leffen complained about it, I said, I feel pretty called out by this. And he's like, no, you would be really good on a GameCube controller too, so you're not targeted. But then it's still like, bruh, it's still... like, I am not gonna give them the assumption that I'm not part of the problem when I am also the most prominent box player. Because at that point, it becomes a very complex thing where I just wonder what they want from me, right? Do they want me to do all that stuff and win, lose? What happens then? And it's kind of like, I guess it ties into the final general question I want to ask, which is just like, what should box players do to either help the process along or stop the shit talking? Because if the answer is just switch to GameCube controller, then you don't want nerfs, you want a ban. But then you say you want nerfs. So at that point, what do you really want? It's extremely demotivating and irritating to hear that consistently. And then I see a lot of box players respond with equal aggression. But personally, I would like to avoid just raising tensions for no real gain, right? When they're already escalating and I don't feel like anything is happening. Or not anything is happening, but I don't feel like anything would diffuse the tensions. I don't feel like anything I could do diffuses the tensions in the community. So I guess I would just like to ask you to take consideration to other players and, you know, not do floaty hate, mid-tier hate, box hate. I know it's too much to ask, but I would just like that. Knuckles, I've already told you I'm willing. I told P-Test that I'm willing. I told you that I am down for this. I've said that I will test any firmware you give me. You cannot hate NetPlay Facos. They are part of a minority, a protected minority, okay? I've not talked about this specific nerf on stream. What is this? What did you just link me? This is... Why should a controller player ever be able to do frame 1 dashbacks when a box player cannot ever? This is my idea only for testing purposes. I would not necessarily be implemented even if it's usable. The idea is to lightly nerf box travel time. It only applies to going from full left to full right in one frame and vice versa. Not neutral to either direction. I think that's sick. I think that's a baseline, simple one that is super sick and definitely should just be there. I think that's a really good nerf. Let me see here. I just got DM'd a proposal for box nerfs. Let me read this. I don't... Knuckles, do you mind if I read the specifics out? If not, I won't. Can read all of it? Okay. So, I just got DM'd this. Prompt, box up tilt. Background info. To perform up tilt, you press hold mod X up, then A. Points of concern. On GCC, it is not too hard to input an up tilt from neutral, but it is extremely difficult to input up tilt after a downward control stick input. If you fail the input on a GameCube controller, you will either tap jump, jab, or up smash. On rectangles, the mod X button trivially prevents upward inputs from tap jumping, which makes it easier to perform up tilts out of crouch, out of wave dash, and out of ledge dash. I will say, I don't think it makes it easier out of wave dash. I think out of wave dash, it is extremely easy to do up tilt anyway, but I can talk about that later. To handle up tilt out of crouch, implement a lockout on upward tilt inputs for X frames after down is released. During the lockout, all upward inputs will exceed the tap jump threshold. To handle up tilt out of wave dash, implement a lockout on upward tilt inputs for XY frames after a downward or sideward directional is pressed, and then digital L or R is pressed. During the lockout, all upward inputs will exceed the tap jump threshold. This will make the penalty for failing similar to GCC. Inputted too soon, equivalent to too quick and overshooting on GameCube controller, you get a tap jump or up smash. I think that's... I think out of crouch this makes perfect sense. I think out of wave dash it does not make any sense. I made a... but you say it's old. This proposal old, we agree with you on the wave dash. Good. Because outside of wave dash and ledge dash, I think out of crouch this makes perfect sense. I think CC up tilt is super stupid. Beans, I will say I do CC up tilt a lot. I think CC up tilt is very good, and like I spam that shit with Marth. Like I will CC up tilt with Marth. CC up tilt affects Fox, it affects Marth, it affects a few different characters pretty damn good. It affects Yoshi as well. I've done CC up tilt with Yoshi a decent bit. So there are, like, just look at, also Sheik. Sheik gets extremely good with CC up tilt. CC up tilt is very good with Sheik. I think that's probably the most egregious one, that you can just CC up tilt like everything. I don't think Samus, because up tilt is too slow to really be used after CC that much. But yeah, the answer is a lot of characters. But it's a rough discussion, and yes, I would definitely trial that nerf. I think that nerf out of crouch is perfectly valid, and I would 100% trial it, like, whenever. I think that's a completely fair lockout to add. Doing, what's it called? Doing wave dash up tilt, though, is super easy on controller. I think... Oh yeah, I'm down. I'm down to try firmware. I'm completely down to try any firmware. If it doesn't break my controller. If it breaks my controller, we have a problem. But if... what's it called? If it doesn't, we're good. And when I mean break, I mean that it doesn't input anything at all. And yeah, I agree, Leffen. Leffen in chat just said, all tilts are significantly better on box, mostly because they don't require setup. And I think that's a very valid point, is that I don't think it's a huge difference. I think up tilt is sometimes an exception, in that like wave dash up tilt, I still believe is easy on controller. But to do fastest one, doing a wave dash and then up tilt on box is definitely easier, but doing the fastest one I think is pretty easy on GameCube controller. However, with that said, every non-wave dash tilt is just way easier on controller. It's just let me rephrase that. Every non-wave dash tilt is significantly easier on a box controller than it is on a regular controller. I do genuinely believe that outside of specifically that, sometimes it's clearly just way better. Also, stuff like pivot tilts are easier. Not just pivot up tilt, but like pivot F tilt and pivot down tilt are just significantly easier on box as well, I think. But yeah, it's a rough spot, and I would definitely trial. If you have firmware ready, then yes, I will download firmware and play with it as soon as tomorrow if you want. Like I will queue ranked on new firmware and you don't have to tell me what it does. I will just play it. I don't mind that at all. I struggle to get the fastest wave dash. I have a really easy time doing wave dash up tilt, but I often lose to like 1 or 2 frames almost every time. I don't do the fastest one, which I can do pretty easily on GameCube controller even with no practice. So that's, again, here's an important thing. Here's the thing about box controllers this way. I mentioned this earlier in the talk as well, but every single issue with a box controller can always be attributed to skill issue. That is not the same for a GameCube controller. Me saying that does not mean objectively that wave dash up tilt is worse on box. All it means is that I am worse at it. And you could very well just do it perfectly every time if you practice it enough. And as soon as that's true, that means that it's a skill issue and it is objectively better because you can just do it frame 1 every time. While, you know, you might be screwed by polling, by pod, and all of that stuff for GameCube controllers. So me saying that doesn't matter. You could just say anything and you can always reply with it's a skill issue, because it is. As long as it's virtually possible and it's not a frame perfect input like, you know, Shine Out a Shield, you can get 100% consistent. And I think that's perfectly fair for Wave Dash Up Tilt, where I see in front of me what I need to practice in order to get it consistent and do it frame perfect. And it's just a question of have I put in the time? No. So it's a problem there. And yeah, Leffen, we talked about how layouts aren't the same. Actually, no, we barely touched on that. I probably should. We talked about how characters are impacted differently, and it's basically impossible to make a what's it called? A perfect controller. But with like for every character, there's always going to be some characters that get affected more or less. But layouts for sure. I think the best example is probably like Falcon, for example, who doesn't care about B moves that much, and you can never move the B button from bottom row on a Fox or Falco based controller, because that kind of sucks, but you can on a Falcon controller without losing that much, which enables you to put grab there and put grab and wave dash there at the same time if you want to. Like there's a ton of things like that where you can just have it like way more reliable. And if you put it on the bottom row, that means that you can now do the wave dashes or ledge dashes with just one hand, which is inherently more reliable than doing it with 2 hands, where you no longer need to drop from ledge with your left hand. You can now do drop from ledge with the C-stick and still get the ledge dash, and then all you need are the directions during the jump, which is way more lenient than otherwise. So the fact that layouts can change as well is good from a like consumer perspective, where it's it gives you more choice, and for non-competitive games it is great, and I think that's like a good feature. But it does mean that you can do layouts that are better for certain characters and worse for other characters and stuff like that, for sure. But yeah, I think I've said basically everything I want on it. I see that Knuckles has linked me the firmware. I will download the firmware and flash it on the Frame 1 for tomorrow, and then I will stream with the trial firmware. I have no idea what's in it, but I guess we will find out. So that is what I will do tomorrow. I feel like a lot of people ignore the fact that box controls are a must in terms of hand pains, hand issues for many. Pretty underappreciated point. I think people... Okay, I have a strong opinion on this, which is I strongly disagree. If we banned wobbling because people hate playing against it, I think it is perfectly fair to say stop playing the game if you can't use a regular controller. I think it is morally really annoying and a frustrating proposition, but I think it makes perfect, consistent sense with the wobbling nerf and like how that shadow band I sees. I don't think hand pains has to be part of the discussion for box controllers at all. I think it is used as a way to shut down discussion about the competitive integrity of the controller a lot of the time. I think it is super nice for hand pains. I play way more now than I did before. I do think that box controllers have extended my career significantly and have made my daily life better in that sense, yes. In terms of competition, I think that does not necessarily have to be part of the discussion at all. And I mean, that's hard to say, right? Because I also don't want to quit the game. If they ban rectangles, like Khalid ones or whatever, see if I have that up still. I don't know if I do. I don't think I have the Khalid tweet here yet anymore, but the like poll about, oh no, I found it. Obviously people voted no, but he does just say, another day of Melee with cheaters being allowed to play. Ban rectangles. Every single rectangle player is a cheater, no exceptions. And I mean, if you believe that, then, and you ban them, I think that's completely, like, reasonable despite the ergonomic benefit. Especially given that nothing is stopping someone from creating a Smash Stick. Which brings me to the point that people bring up the Smash Stick and say, aha, gotcha. What if people play on the Smash Stick? And I say, I would love to play on a Smash Stick. The instant a Smash Stick comes out and it is, like, playable and you can buy one, I will buy one, because if that solves the issue and I have an analog, like, stick and then a box input for the rest of it, I would play on that, because then I don't have to deal with all the bullshit that gets flung my way, right? So the thing is, that does not exist in current time. Hopefully, something like that will exist in the future, but I mean, yeah, is box with nunchuck not enough? I mean, I don't use the box. The other ones don't have it. I also think nunchucks are, like, it's the same thing, yeah. I mean, it's complicated. I would want a controller that is built for it, is how I look at it. But it basically doesn't exist right now. So that's one of the things where it's in the future, so that, you know, you can't really use it as a gotcha now either. You just have people complain about it and use it as a, hey, what if you had a stick? And I assume a lot of other box players would say, yeah, good. I like that. There's a rectangle coming with analog buttons. What do you think of that? I'll play on it. If that's what's legal, I'll play on it. If it gives the ergonomic benefits, but it has analog buttons so that travel time is nerfed, like, in that sense, then I'll play on it. I'll play on a stick controller as well. I just don't want to play on a GameCube controller. But yeah, the thing is, none of these exist right now, so I don't think that is a gotcha that some people think, that it's like, what if you had a stick? Well, we don't. So, good shit. But yeah, I have enjoyed this discussion. I hate that I have to end it now. I will be streaming tomorrow. I know dates on, or no times on exactly when I'm streaming tomorrow. I will update on Twitter, but we will be testing out the box nerf that I was DM, the firmware. So I have no idea what is in it, but given that Knuckles said it'd be fun to watch, to see my, like, take on it, that is what I will be doing tomorrow. Just, like, play ranked on the presumably nerfed box, and we'll see how that goes. But for now, I have to head to the weekly. So that is what I'm going to do now. And yes, this is going to turn into a video. Hopefully not. It's going to be so annoying to edit. It's going to be so annoying to edit. God damn it. But I will edit it. So I'm going to upload this not too long. And yeah, tomorrow we do box nerf and see how that goes. Is the weekly going to be streamed? No, there is no stream for it, unfortunately. So see you tomorrow. Let's raid Monophion. If people want me to do more of this, I'm super down. I wrote down some stuff beforehand, and I want to do more discussion streams like this, like, regularly, because I think it's a fun subject, so or a fun, like, way to do streams. So whenever there's new subjects, I am probably gonna see if I can do a discussion stream like this and see if we